Hello everyone, welcome to the Ahdurin region. I'm your host, Ahdurin himself. Yes, the title is correct, you're seeing it correctly. We're doing another challenge video. It has been a few minutes, a few days, a few months since the last one. However, it is the Blue Rescue Team Starter Studies series continuation here, and we're using a really special thing. This is not only continuing the Starter series, but is also launching off another sort of series thing that I'm doing on this channel, which I'll get into in a moment. But before we begin, if you haven't already, and if you'd like to, I'd appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed, because algorithm boost, plus it lets me know that you really like the content. It helps out in the long term. It makes the channel grow, it makes it stronger. It's like watering a tree. So go ahead and do all those sort of things. I appreciate it all the same. For those of you that have never seen the starter study, as we go through the introductory part here, let me explain the rules here. It is basically trying, for me at least, to determine which starter combination is the best. So here are the rules. You can only use the two Pokemon in the dungeon. In this case, we're going with Bulbasaur and Pikachu, and I'll talk about why this is special in a bit. Can't use any allies and can't even recruit them unless it's mandatory by the story. We've got to do minimum missions during those free days. Again, I'm assuming you understand a bit about the Rescue Team games. I'll touch in every now and then in case you don't. Can't use any items, can't bring them in when entering into a dungeon with the exception of held items, so it's kind of similar to a main series run. No items, but you can carry items in, and then of course use the items that you find when you're going through a dungeon. I can't use any TMs or HMs, it's the starter study, so we gotta go by starter natural learn sets. Can't use Quicksaves shenanigans, can't use Wondermail, and the final time that I use to determine how good, how bad the run is based on the in-game time after the cutscene. So basically when the end of the game it says Finn, and then it sends you back to the menu, whatever the time is at that point. A couple of notes as well. All of this, by the way, in the description as well. When entering Thunderwave Cave, you're going to have items because they're forced on you. Once we go on the run, I'm allowed to bring a couple of apples or big apples if necessary, the held item thing. And this is technically a no reviver seed run. However, if they are there, I'm not restricting them. I'm just going to put that as a note when determining which starter combination is the best. Again, all of this is available in the description. Let's get into the run itself. So here, this has been a trend for all of these starter studies, just gaining as much experience as I can in this first dungeon while we have the ability to be overpowered. But let's talk about why Bulbasaur and Pikachu. The other ones I've talked about, like we're spinning a wheel or doing something random as we save this Caterpie here. What's so special about the Bulbasaur-Pikachu pairing? This is my first ever pairing in Blue Rescue Team. But it's not just that, because it's a lot more in-depth than that. It's a lot more emotional than that. This is my first Pokemon game. And so as a result, this, technically, is my first starter Pokemon. This is my first starter run, this is my first ever playthrough, and so in a way, I'm kind of recreating that run, because in that run, I wouldn't use the allies too much except when they were in the run, like Abosl later on. I just kind of ran with these two. And I was not very good. I didn't know anything about the Pokemon games, I didn't know anything about the mechanics and like type advantages and stuff like that, so fun fact, when getting to the end of the main series, of the main storyline and everything like that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was somewhere in the 50s, and that is not normal for a Blue Rescue Team game. You'll see what level we are when we get to the end of this, but I was very much over-leveled. For those of you that have never played this game and are just watching it, thanks. And typically you're beating the Rescue Team games in general across of them, somewhere in like if you're speedrunning it, probably like the mid to late 20s. If you're doing it casually, probably early 30s, mid 30s-ish. And then you'll have items as well. This is basically a more complicated version of that first run. So as we go over now to save these Magnemites over here, let's talk a little bit more about that and what this brand new series thing is. So I've already recorded this, really want to do content that's like nostalgic. I've just been in that mood of trying to like relive the glory days, because one of the things that annoys me about past me is the fact that I don't have that first ever playthrough run. I don't have that first ever Blue Rescue Team run. I'm pretty sure I've reset over it. I definitely don't have my first main series game run, and so as a result, I kind of want to redo that. I kind of want to relive that and have it on the internet so that way in the future me can at least look back and say, hey, this is what it kind of looked like in case I forget. So this is starting a small series, which is going to be something along the lines of, there's a hashtag down there, I don't exactly know what it is right now, but something along the lines of like my first Pokemon run, something like that. And I'm going to be doing a little series like this, and the big thing is that I really like, and it would be cool if this was the case, although I'm a tiny guy, I don't exactly know if this is going to be popular. It would be really, really fun if you guys did that as well. So if you're a YouTuber or content creator in any way, shape, or form, send me your first Pokemon run stuff. And in fact, that's going to be our quote-unquote question of the day here. Go ahead and leave in the comment section below what was your first game and your first team in that game. Whether it's a Mystery Dungeon game or a main series game or a Ranger game or whatever other game. What was your first Pokemon game? And what was your first team looking like? I'd be very, very excited to see what that looks like. So, as we have our dream here and shift away from this, let's talk about this actual story, because now it's getting to the complicated parts. Speaking of complications here, as some voices talking and an earthquake is occurring, it's now time for our first boss fight in Mount Steel against Skarmory. Now, since I have gotten older and wiser and potentially better, I have realized Skarmory is not nearly as complicated as I made them out to be. So as a result, this is a lot easier at this time around than the first time. I remember struggling a lot on Skarmory with this combination. I don't exactly know how, seeing as we have a Pikachu on the team. But I'm assuming past me just wasn't very good and probably threw a bunch of grass attacks at it, because that's about the only thing I can think of. Nevertheless, to get there though, we gotta get through Mount Steel. So that's not gonna be too complicated with the rock types and the generally still weaker Pokemon at this point in the game. You don't have to worry about it too much. I mean, Zigzagoon, shout out Zigzagoon, but not exactly the biggest threat in the universe. And then, Pokemon like Aeron, we're eventually going to get grass type attacks, hopefully, soon. We've got Leech Seed, which, when I was a kid, I know for a fact I thought Leech Seed was terrible because it didn't do damage. Why would you use a move if it didn't do damage? I think we've all gone through that specific phase. So tackle spamming galore as we continue through Mount Steel. As we reach the top of Mount Steel, we notice Diglett somehow floating in the middle of nowhere. Not sure how that works. Anyway, we've got a Skarmory to fight, so let's get going. Skarmory, again, not very complicated of a fight, though when I was a child, this was impossible. Also, Thunderwave and Growl, yeah, I wouldn't have switched those moves on at all. I wouldn't have used Leech Seed on the Skarmory. Though on the bright side, at least for younger me, because the weird thing about this game is that if you defeat the opponent through non-attacks or certain non-attacks, Leech Seed, poison damage, recoil damage, if they faint from that, you don't actually get experience points for it. Also, wait, hold up, the feat. Did I talk about the feat thing? I think I was a little late for the feat thing. Dang. Oh well, you get the gist. Anyway, as a result, lack of experience there, but we get some cool items and are able to continue on our adventure, though this conversation about needing more members is also very important. Why is it important, you might ask? Well, we talked to Wigglytuff. Now, for those of you that have been on this channel for a while, you know that Wigglytuff is my favorite Pokemon, and this Wigglytuff is part of the reason why. However, Wigglytuff was not always my favorite Pokemon. In fact, for the longest time, it was what is currently my second place, Swampert, and that particular line, and I think it's just because I like the Mudkips, it's very cool, and also because I never really talked to that Wigglytuff too much, because I didn't buy friend areas. In fact, my appreciation for Wigglytuff grew with the sequel games, which would be a very, very interesting thing to talk about in the next series, or the next episode of this series, if I do the Explorers games, which, if you leave likes, comments, and talk about how that will be important, maybe that'll be the next thing I do. Though if I'm going in chronological order, then it wouldn't be Explorers, it would be at least one more game beforehand. Now, of course, if we talk about this game, we've got to talk about the bad guys in this game, and it's Team Meanies! What a wonderful squadron that there was here. Imagine my dislike for Gengar in particular. If you know the story about this Gengar, you can understand why it becomes even more of an enemy of you. But funnily enough, when I grew up a little bit more and was like, hey, why do people like Gengar so much? Oh, it's a really good Pokemon? Why was this one a meanie pants? That very much frustrated me then. Speaking of meanie pantses, we gotta deal with, not Caterpie here, Caterpie's a fun Pokemon here, Metapod's lost in the forest. These meanie pantses, we now go on a race to save a Metapod. The winner gets the reward, which Gengar doesn't realize is $0. But along the way, you might be wondering as well, a random aside here, why our name is called Decades? Well, fun fact for us old folks, this game is almost 2 decades old. It is almost 2 decades old. I want to sit with that for a second as we sit around doing our shopping and all that. This game is nearly 20 years old. I think this game could legally vote. Do you understand the shock and disappointment and gray hairs from that? The tragedy? Anyway, Sinister Woods. We transition over now to the first boss fight that gave me trouble in the past and gives me trouble now. It's fighting Team Meanies. That's a cool thing about this game, that the one little nitpick I have with the Explorers games is that we don't fight the antagonist, or these mini-antagonists in that game. We do in this one, though, and I remember having immense trouble with this. That time, at least, I could understand why we're going up against multiple poison types and we don't have super effective moves. The good thing, though, is we have Growl, and when I was a kid, I would not have used Growl, but now I know Growl is actually good, and Paralysis is good, and Leech Seed is good as we paralyze Medicham there. Spite is annoying. It will always be annoying in the Mystery Dungeon games because it removes all of the power points as opposed to a couple like in the main series games. But we do have some avenues to work with here. We start vine whipping everything left and right. I'm going for the side things because Gengar is always going to curse, as it does here. That cuts its HP in half, making it a little bit easier to work with, and now we can actually transition over to trying to beat up Gengar there while taking a little bit of curse damage. Medicham going for Bide is actually good as long as we don't attack Medicham because it'll just sit there doing nothing. The Poison Sting is rough. Ekans is actually a huge threat in this particular matchup, and it is for all the sort of matchups. It's surprising because Ekans is known for being a very powerful Pokemon. We've got a bunch of berries, though, that we picked up, so there's the opportunity to deal with this in a good way. We were able to get rid of Gengar through a Vine Whip. Quick attack there. I'm glad that missed because Pikachu did not do a great job there of attacking the biter. However, Vine Whip on the Ekans, Thunder Shock smartly on the Ekans, Medicham continuing to store the energy. Pikachu's pretty close, so what we got to do, because there's no easy way to give berries, we're going to do a little bit of a stall attack, I think, of like running away. Medicham's going to sit back there for a little bit. Then from here, after a little bit of shenanigans to try to figure out what exactly to do, do I throw the Oran Berry now? I throw the Pecha Berry. Ekans hits me with a poison type move, which when I was a kid, I did not understand why Bulbasaur wasn't getting hit by the poison type moves for super effective damage. Then I found out I'm part poison type. That helps. Throw the Oran Berry on Pikachu to be able to heal them up. Thunder Shock knocks out Ekans, and now it's just Medicham left. A 2-on-1 fight. Easy money. And from here, of course, they run away crying and screaming because they're like, oh no, these poor children were able to beat us, able to grab an actual child from the forest, and we save the day getting our $0 reward. Our next mission is on the next day, in fact, as Jumpluff appears from here. I think during one of my monologues we were talking about how Jumpluff needed their friend to be saved, or I didn't mention it, the screen mentioned it. And now that Shiftry hasn't returned from that adventure, it's time for us to do the same. Or at least not the same, sorry, we have to go and save the day so that we don't follow in Shiftry's footsteps of not return. You get the gist. After some silent shenanigans, we're able to reach and Jumpluff, where Jumpluff's already saved. Shiftry's kind of knocked out here, and boom, things are coming. The monster is coming. The monster is who? The monster is the Lightning Bird. And this becomes an introduction to one of the biggest problems of this particular run when we're trying to speed run, fast run, starter study this. A lot of the bosses are birds. And while my partner is cool with that, I, as a Bulbasaur, am not. As you can see by my completely collapsed version right there. So as a result, we gotta figure out a way to be able to handle Zapdos while also being weak to Zapdos. Which isn't great. We gotta find a strategy. We also have to get through Mount Thunder, which itself is going to be a very complicated dungeon. Let's see if we can do it. The answer, as we get a level up right here, is no, because my partner has this insistence to attack that Stantler with a quick attack that they don't have, and by switching it off, Pikachu gets destroyed. Not a great start. The second time around at least goes a lot better, and now it's time to see how we can do against Zapdos, who shows up and immediately scares Pikachu, who then, after getting a little brave, charges up in front. This makes things slightly more complicated, though we do have the ability to paralyze, and in this game you can paralyze electric types, so we take full advantage of that opportunity there. Exclusive move user to make sure that we're constantly using moves, and from here just whittle down the attacks there. I've got a power band on, so I'm actually using my normal type moves as opposed to my grass type moves because, and I'm fairly certain about this, this game is prior to the physical special split because it's technically a Gen 3 game. So as a result, I can't use my grass type moves for multiple reasons. It's going to be weaker, and also we got a more powerful, neutral, physical attacking move, and somehow through that and super effective electric type, well, neutral electric types, we're able to beat Zapdos, kind of. Zapdos is going easy on us, but nevertheless, we save Shiftry and beat the game. Yeah, that's it. We got nothing else to worry about. Completely no. Oh no, Alakazam knows that we're a human. That's not going to be a plot point in the future. I hope. I'm just living my life. ... Concerned voice eventually coming here. And this right here isn't foreshadowing anything at all. We'll just let it aside. This brings me back to complications here because it's never me. It's always the partner that ends up messing things up, and I don't know why. You would think the second run through goes a little bit better, but no, when you have 4 enemies in the room at one time, and most of them are grass types, which means not only do your grass type moves resist, the electric moves also resist, and at any point in time, these Cacturns, which are Cacturns by the way, they're already more powerful than us baby starter Pokemon here. But on top of that, and the fact that eventually, as you'll see here, they can use their version of Bide, aka Revenge in this game, the moment you or your partner make a false move, like here, boom, complete, utter domination. Not helpful. Thankfully though, on the 3rd attempt, we finally reached the top of the mountain, the Hill of the Ancients, where we are supposed to meet with this Xatu character, who will tell us a little bit more about our humanity and why we're here and what we're doing. After a brief little attempt of attacking them, we're able to get the information. So as you can see here, 3, 2, 1, kablamo, immediately Xatu says, nope, you're not going to attack me, you human, which Xatu apparently figured out by staring into the sun. I do not recommend this. Official warning there. Also, Xatu mentions that the natural disasters that are occurring, which is the big plotline of the story, has something to do with the fact that we're humans, and Gengar's overhearing this. That's not going to be problematic at all. So what's happening on the screen is a little bit of the actual story stuff. If you'd like to read this, you can do so. It's right on the screen. But while this story stuff is going on, because it'll take a little bit, I actually want to talk a little bit about the game itself and the importance that it has to me and why so much of my content surrounds Mystery Dungeon, and specifically the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon franchise. Let's fly back. Way, way back in the past. It's 2000-something. I'm at a summer camp. And at the summer camp, everybody's bringing their own consoles and stuff like that, and I remember one of the people that was there brought their Game Boy, and I remember it well because it's that fuchsia bluish color. I think it was like a blue Game Boy, like somewhere in that dark blue color, and they were playing a Pokemon game on there, and this was my first time ever seeing Pokemon. I vaguely knew it as that one TV show that sometimes appeared on Saturdays if I was flipping through the channels. I think at this time as well, it would be during the Battle Frontier time period, the stuff that would be appearing there, so it's not Ash doing the gym challenge itself. Already a sign that my Pokemon journey is not starting with the main adventure, if the anime is not doing the main adventure. But I remember that person with the blue Game Boy was playing this game, and it was fascinating to me because it's all this, weirdly in a way, it's very, especially for a kid, like mathematical, where this type beats this type. It's rock, paper, scissors, but there's math involved because there's power points and base power and damage can be done, but there's super effectiveness, that's multipliers. So it appealed to my still analytical side brain. And I remember this very well because that person was playing this game and they had just started it or started a new file, and so they were at the very first rival fight. This is for Pokemon, I want to say it was Ruby. First rival fight, basically as soon as you go up, you're fighting May for the first time because this person was playing as Brendan, and I remember they threw out the Mudkip, and the opposing person threw out the Trico, and instantly I was hooked. Because you gotta think back, for kids during this time period, seeing all of this action happening on the screen was just so cool, and I wasn't somebody, this is, I'm somewhere around like 6, 7 years old, if that. This is the first experience I have with video games as a whole, and so my little bit of experience with playing was like with the educational games that you generally know about, and so as a result, I was so fascinated by it that I went home and I was like, Mom, Dad, Pokemon's a thing, and we have to get one, and they were like, all right, sure, if you get good grades, do your normal thing, we'll get you a Pokemon game, your standard adult parent, do this thing properly, and I'll do it, type of mentality. And so I get the good grades and do all that fun stuff, and I get the Pokemon game, and I'm very excited because I can't wait to see what that's going to be. And I had heard about this Pokemon game was just being released, and that was going to be a new opportunity. We can play with this. I can use the Mudkip, or maybe it's a different Mudkip. Maybe it's a different blue Mudkip. It's a different animal entirely. Who knows what it is? And so I get the game, I load it up, and it's this. It's Blue Rescue Team. Now, I had no idea about the other sort of side series or anything like that, and to me, this was just, hey, maybe this is another Pokemon, this is a new Pokemon game. Of course, the design's going to be different. Of course, the graphics are going to be different. maybe this is what it's supposed to be. And so I go through this game not only not knowing what's going on, not only not knowing the rules, not only not knowing who all these characters are, but I go through it thinking this is normal. And then I find out a little bit later, oh no, this is one of the side series. The main series is something different. And that just got me hooked even more, because this type of game, unlike the main series games where you're sort of creating your own story with your choice of the Pokemon and how you go through your adventure, this game has the story inside. It's already there, but the story is much more in depth. It's across fields of fire and the broken forest. The way that the game talked about it made you feel like you were these characters, which was the whole point, that you were these Pokemon. And so it got me hooked. I got the following generations of games, and from there the Mystery Dungeon franchise became a staple of what I enjoy in the Pokemon franchises, and you're always looking for a game with a story like this. And there's some good story Pokemon games. I think Scarlet and Violet, for example, have a fantastic story, especially compared to like other generations. Like Red and Blue doesn't have a fantastic story. It's just got that baseline that is brand new and it's able to be built off of, which is what Red and Blue is big for. Scarlet and Violet has a great story in it, and the way that the branches kind of converge at the end and everything is so cool to me. This is, to me though, these games, the Rescue Team games, have some of, if not the best stories in the Pokemon franchise. Speaking of stories, let's get back into this one. As you can probably tell if you were reading the previous dialogue boxes, due to the fact that we're a human, Gengar has convinced the entire town that we are actually the ones causing the natural disasters, and if they got rid of us, then the natural disasters would go away. And so everybody in the town takes a vote and decides that we should go away. Pikachu, of course, and a few of the other town members are like, hey, that's probably not the best idea, and Pikachu goes on the run with us. So, after getting through Lapis Cave, that previous dungeon, we're now here at Mount Blaze, and this is our first big threat. The previous ones have been various levels of difficulty, and we've lost a couple of times, but this is hugely bad for us, because in this dungeon, it's Mount Blaze, so as you can expect it from that Magpie right there, there are a lot of fire types, which aren't very good for us as a Bulbasaur. On top of that, there's a few rock types that can make things annoying for Pikachu. I don't actually remember if there are any ground types, but nevertheless, it's a big problematic situation that we're gonna have to resolve. And then at the very end, at the very top of this dungeon, is another Pokemon that is very bad for us. I'm not sure how, I completely forgot about the Numel that are here, but Numel is here, that's annoying for Pikachu, and we get to the top of the dungeon, where as we're walking past, a creature comes down from the sky, begging for somebody to stop the mountain from screaming. The volcano is screaming. It's Moltres. Moltres is very bad. Yes, we do have an electric type, but Moltres is a very good fire type, and basically can one-hit KO us at any point in time, so it becomes a matter of strategy here. Luckily, we're able to dodge that first item there. We Poison Powder, but I learned from there that it's not going to be enough. As we jump into this second attempt here, do you think it'll go any better? I'm asking you because Gravel Rock, maybe. The double team is helpful. That'll always, boost evasion. Leech Seed to help us heal. But if we get one shot by a Fire Spin, that's not good. And throughout this dungeon, of course, there are a bunch of Arcanines and Fearos, and the one thing that you have to know, in this game, Fury Attack is broken. No, I mean truly understand when I say Fury Attack is broken, I mean that Fury Attack is broken. But here goes Moltres Take 3, and this time at least, we've got a little bit of a better strategy in play. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is the Gravel Rock Double Team combination there. This time, though, Leech Seed and the Paralysis actually hitting is helpful because we can switch back and forth between using that Paralysis and not. Here's the thing I learned, though. Poison overtakes the Paralysis. There are some status conditions that can stack on top of each other and others that can't. So that's not a good thing. We can't actually go and do the Poison, meaning that all of a sudden Poison's not nearly as effective as I thought it would be. Eventually, of course, we end up losing this particular run-through because of just the raw power and that couple of mistakes I made previously. Adding a little bit of a Leech Seed and doing extra damage here, trying to get that last run. Unfortunately, losing to a Wing Attack, but we've got a strategy in mind now. After a little bit of a mishap over here, and trust me, that wasn't a very good mishap, we're able to get to Moltres. One more time, let's see if we can do it. First things first, don't mess it up. So after doing everything properly here, we Gravel Rock Double Team, switch on the Thunderwave to get the paralysis, Leech Seed for that chip damage over time, and from here, we start doing everything. Tackle, Thundershock, back and forth here, switching back and forth between the paralysis, Pikachu playing part support, part big hitter, while I'm just playing, I got a little bit of damage, I can do the Leech Seed stuff, and just repeated focus from there. Lucky that Moltres doesn't actually use any of their attacks, they go for their basic A attack instead, and we're able to get enough paralysis on them in general that after another Leech Seed, another Thundershock, we're able to bring Moltres down. After yelling at him a little bit, being like, hey, wait a minute, dude, we gotta go do the save the world thing, we're not busy destroying your volcano, we're able to get away. We find this, we're good with this. Thanks, Moltres, appreciate your efforts. Gotta go. And that's another thing that's fascinating with the Mystery Dungeon games, unlike, in my opinion, anything else in the Pokemon franchise. The emotion that's put in. Situations like this where you're sitting down with your partner after going on a long adventure, continuing to run away from a big threat that's coming at you. Stuff like this doesn't happen in the main series game. Sure, there are big threats, but they don't have that same punching feeling, because it's not like you're the character, you're playing a character, and it feels that way when you're doing a main series game. Now don't get me wrong, like I mentioned previously, some main series games have fantastic stories, but there's something about the Mystery Dungeon game, and maybe it's the music as well, throughout this entirety of this entire, playthrough here. We've got the music going on. Something about the music and story combination just hits you a little bit harder. Which is always, it makes it that much more sweet when you're able to succeed, and that much more devastating when you fail. Not that we're gonna fail again, right? I mean, like, this is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Sure, we're a grass type, but we're in Frosty Forest. What, ice types? Should that be a problem for a grass type? Haha, haha, ha. And of course, not even 45 seconds after that previous situation, the next time around, though, we're much more successful, but this brings up another issue. This boss fight is against Articuno. And Articuno not only is a flying type, which is bad for me as a Bulbasaur, it's not only an ice type, which is bad for me as a Bulbasaur, but also has a move that can do room damage in Powder Snow, which, if it doesn't knock out me, could easily knock out the partner. So I'm very, very terrified about this particular matchup. Articuno comes down, and the fight officially begins. This is going to be a game plan of strategy, a game plan of skill, a game plan of throwing rocks, getting double teams off, and getting the statuses. Leech Seed and Paralysis, although not successful there, is the game plan going forward. Eating a Blast Seed to try to do additional damage because our moves are not very strong. Going to try to use those things there, take advantage of the Thunder Shocks as well. And slowly and carefully, I'm noticing a chance here. Now, I'm not doing a lot of damage, but the chip damage from the Leech Seed, the constant switching back and forth into paralyzing, that's the word I'm looking for, Articuno here, eventually gets us to go closer and closer. The miss there, oddly helpful in a way, because now we just have one main focus to go for, Thundershock away. The Leech Seed wearing off, I actually don't know if Leech Seed would affect Articuno at this point, so I just decided not to go for it. With Thundershocks going, we go for quick attacks, but not even necessary. Somehow, some way, the boss I am scared of the most in this particular run, besides of course the final boss, we somehow win. Though, before all that chaos occurs, Articuno is about to blast us into pieces when Abosl appears. And Abosl is one of my favorite Pokemon. It's up there on the list. It's not at the top of the list just because of the number of generations, but in this game, when it came to the Pokemon that were introduced to me in this game, after all, this was my first playthrough, brand new experiences and everything like that, Abosl struck me as interesting. It's fascinating, and I'll be honest, you might have had this experience, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I've had 2 experiences with Pokemon that I thought were legendary, only to find out they weren't afterwards. The first one is here, Abosl. Abosl just has this, and I hate to use this term here, but it fits so well, this aura about them that feels like they're in control of everything. The way that they were able to talk down to Articuno made them feel like, oh, they're on equal playing fields, and I know Articuno is this legendary bird, so this must be another legendary type Pokemon. making it that much more cooler. And plus Absol, it's a dark type Pokemon. It's got this cool, like, premonition of disasters thing that they've got about it. The lore behind Absol is really interesting. And so Absol, very, very cool. Unfortunately, due to the specific rules of this challenge, I'm not actually using Absol going forward. In fact, we dropped them from the team when going through the dungeon. But man, Absol, such a cool Pokemon. And I greatly enjoyed using Absol in that first run through way back many, many years ago. I typically am a person that runs through with a 2-person team on these rescue team games, but I remember bringing Absol everywhere going forward, just being like, yo, this guy's fantastic. Unfortunately, this is prior to the physical special split, and so being a dark type with a bunch of physical attacks means that Absol isn't exactly the greatest Pokemon, especially in these games, but man, was Absol cool to see. Meanwhile, after spouting about my awesomeness and the coolness of Abosl and all that, we got to Mount Freeze, where at the top of Mount Freeze, after being informed by Gardevoir that Ninetales was up there, we can find the truth and determine whether or not we actually are the human that did the bad things or not. Of course, we have to get through Mount Freeze itself, and while there's no boss fight in here, it is no slouch of a dungeon, of course, with the number of ice types out of there. Another issue that's starting to come up is not only the Fury attacks that this Angus is eventually going to knock me out from, but also PP management. Power points are running out, and these are getting longer and longer of dungeons, so eventually we're forced to use alternative strategies. On this next run through, despite going through 3 or 4 different floors where the stairs basically spawned in front of us, unfortunately again Fury Swipes ends up knocking us out. Man, if it's not Fury Swipes, though, then it's probably the next worst thing, which in this case, a Swablu is able to take us out with Fury Attack. I should probably do a challenge about this, see how overpowered these type of moves actually are. Eventually, though, we finally reach the peak of Mount Freeze. We get ourselves prepared, and we climb up to the top. No one seems to be here at first, but then Team ACT shows up, and a fight begins. Now, I'm going to be honest, though, I haven't played Rescue Team DX. The scene there is very cool. Ninetales pops down, though, instantaneously, and is like, hey, what's up? How's it going? And after a little bit of explanation here, Ninetales tells us we're not the human. It's not us. We can be relieved. I'll be honest, when I was playing through this game the first time, I thought, okay, maybe it could have been us. Maybe that's some, like, before the game begins, we were a bad guy, and now this is a redemption arc. But it's very cool. It's not us. Though it does leave additional questions about what exactly is going on here. The ground starts shaking, an earthquake starts occurring, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, the journey's not over yet. The story you'd think it'd be over by now. It's a good ending plot point. But there's still things to do. There's still more adventure to do. I've always found this scene as well really fascinating, how Gengar is trying to tell the townsfolk that are still there, hey, why aren't you chasing after the hero? Why aren't you doing this thing? And you can see the others starting to turn on him, starting to be like, well, maybe he's not exactly as trustworthy as he seems, however trustworthy you think Team Meanies could be. But we come back and prove the truth. Get some proof, though we don't have it. The other members here aren't bothering to fight. Caterpie, I believe, did us. The others kind of got swept up in all the commotion, and then Pelipper comes around shooting newspaper leaflets, being like, hey, here's some evidence. I got interviews. We did a newscaster, a whole thing there, which makes me wonder who's writing the newspaper. Because, like, is Pelipper going out interviewing folks? Just being like, hey, what do you think about this new revelation about Ahdurin not being the bad guy? Your thoughts, Charizard. And going from there. I don't know. It's a fun little question to ask. And now our journey gets to continue from here. ACT is gone to face Groudon, who is awoken and causing some chaos. Our job, though, is to just relax, do our missions, calm, cool, and collected life from here. Other people apologize and everything like that, which is always fun to see. But for now, it's kind of calm days, right? The following night, we have a dream and Gardevoir appears with us. We have a nice conversation about Gardevoir's trainer and everything. And I want to talk about Gardevoir itself. A lot of people's favorite Pokemon, certainly up there for a variety of reasons, but I really like Gardevoir because of this. I thought this concept, and still do, it's so cool. It's so fun to have that idea of like this guardian angel that can come down from a fantasy writing perspective, that can come down and just assist you in your journey or like point things out. It's like Stans in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in a way, or like Yugi and Yami Yugi in the original Yu-Gi-Oh series, where it's like you've got this partner in the background that's like assisting you as you go through your journey. I found that always fascinating. Gardevoir's always been cool because of that. This Gardevoir is even special. And then if you go into the post-game, which I won't mention here because I don't go through it in this run, but if you go through the post-game, you do even more adventures with Gardevoir. If you know, you know. And if you don't, maybe we'll do something on the channel about that. Meanwhile, on the screen, we're dealing with our little side mission. This is the equivalent of skipping Erica's gym, if you know, you know. And we're going to be dealing with a couple of Mankeys that have been bothering this Wobbuffet and Wynut. So we're going to go into what I know from speedruns as the really fun part, because there's a speedrunning trick, potentially, if I remember correctly, that can potentially save you time, but it's like one of those odd, like if you're lucky, then woo, if you're not, then you won't get it. So there's always that chance that you could just make up a bunch of time. In the very last floor of this, there are chestnuts that you're supposed to pick up, and specifically there is one on the 9th floor, which is the final floor in the dungeon. You pick it up, you're going to use that in a bit. However, I believe there is a small chance that there could be 2, which basically skips you needing to go through this entire dungeon again. There's also a small chance that there's 0, meaning that you're basically cooked. So that's always a fun part there. Luckily for us, the speedrunning aspect of this is sort of not a real speedrun. It's more of just, hey, how good can I beat the game and maybe get a good time as well. It's always a fun little trick. I'm always going through these runs wondering maybe this is the time I'll get the 2 chestnuts. I don't think I've been successful yet, unless I'm forgetting one. You can let me know in the comments if I've forgotten one. Otherwise though, this dungeon, not very complicated. After picking up the chestnut, we have what I consider to be one of the easier boss fights in this game, especially when we have moves that can do distance damage. Unfortunately, we don't have any of them right now, but look at this. Just watch what happens here. Alright, Vine Whip and Thundershock knocks out a Mankey. I use the attack there, boom. Basically, each of us, as we go through an attack, we're able to beat the Mankey squad here. And they give us a peeled chestnut, which is going to be very useful in about 45 seconds. While this is happening, though, Mankey comes behind us and starts to charge at us again. Only to be bribed by the peeled chestnut that we have. And so in exchange for that chestnut and the other people that'll eventually show up on the screen offering assistance, we're going to change the team base from our house to a better looking house. That'll take a couple days though and requires a few chestnuts, one of which we picked up in the dungeon, one of which is given here, and one more we'll have to go through the dungeon again to pick it up. But eventually we'll turn this base into something real cool looking. And I remember going through this part and being like, I wonder what the base is going to look like. How cool could it look? Is this the final base? Oh no, we still have more things to do? Okay, we'll do that then. Continuing with that chestnut searching party that we've turned into. While we go through this dungeon again looking for that final chestnut, let me bring something up. Let me ask you guys this. For the Blue Rescue Team players that have played through this game a lot, but this is between us, because this is something I've always found confusing. So there is a quest kind of similar to this, where you're helping a Smeargle, right? And you may know this, you may not. Smeargle basically doesn't want to get like a tattoo on their back is effectively the story, and so runs away, and eventually, you know, either you persuade them to do it or something. I forget exactly what it is, but nevertheless, there's that sort of thing. And I swear that was something that could have been done in the main storyline. But for everything I've read online, everything that's been said, it sounds like it's a post-game thing, and I don't remember going too far into the post-game during my initial run-through. So I was just curious what your thoughts were if you remember this. Can you remind me, can you let me know in the comments section, you know, how was that a post-game exclusive thing and I just forgot that I did some post-game stuff? Because I swear, in my head, the post-game stuff I did was unlock the ability to evolve, and that's it. I didn't do much else after that. So I'm curious what your thoughts were, because that's the only time I've ever done the Smeargle thing. Every other time I played Blue Rescue Team, I do the main story and then just stop it there, or I do these challenge videos. I haven't gone deep into the post-game at all. So let me know as well your thoughts on post-game content in this channel in the future. Maybe we'll do like live streams or something like that, do the post-game or something. I don't know, up to you. Anyway, thank you for listening to this intermission. Now back to getting chestnuts and punching legendaries. I guess that's our goal. It's finally time. After this, getting one final chestnut, we go down to the Mankey, hand it over, and complete the base. And man, does this house look cool. I mean, look at it. Look at it. Wait for it. Bam. Look at that. That's a 12 out of 10 house, if I ever say so. And this was another cool thing about these Mystery Dungeon games, especially this generation, is the fact that they made your starter choice feel like it impacted the story, as Mankey attempts to destroy it here. It's another cool aspect of the game that makes it seem like your choices matter, which is something so cool about the Mystery Dungeon franchise, is that, in especially these games, while ultimately it is the same story, that starter choice, that quiz from the very beginning of this challenge, the very beginning of the story as a whole, has implications, has story pathways, has different, tips and tricks and ways that it can impact your gameplay even there. So I love the fact that the house was there. I was so confused at first. I think I remember the first time I thought about this, I'm like, why does it look like a Bulbasaur? That's kind of odd. I mean, it's us, but sure. Why would, if you were a Trico, would it look like a Bulbasaur? Again, I was very young. Please allow me the grace to make those type of mistakes. But it just makes it that much more cool that, oh, if I was a Charmander, this house would look like a Charmander, or it'd be a Mudkip, or it'd be a Torchic, or something like that. It's so cool, and they do that for all of the player starters. Again, another way that these games just have that little bit of extra touch to make that story feel more impactful and more of your specific story. After another day of earthquakes here, Lombre shows up saying that there's a giant town meeting going on, and to make this short, Team ACT, Alakazam, Charizard, and Tyranitar aren't back yet. They haven't saved the day, but they haven't lost either, so it sounds like they're still in that dungeon, which shocks basically everybody because Alakazam's team is, Team Act is the best team in this area. So as a result, Shifty's trying to pull people together to bring a team forward. Lombre stops us because he thinks we're not strong enough, and eventually the team is set. Starting off with the Blastoise over here. Second up, Octillery. Very good choice there. And third up, Golem. Sure. Which brings up an interesting question, and I feel like this is another video idea. Part of the reason why I'm saying this in this challenge is so that you can remind me in the comments and I can eventually make this video, but I'm wondering, out of all the teams that would exist there, what would be the best combination? So either that'll be a video in the future, or you can let me know what your comments below. Of the people that you saw on that screen, and do not include the player or the partner, because that obviously changes depending on the run-through. So of the standard people that are there, who would actually be the best 3-person team to go face Groudon? Let me know. Because I'll tell you what, as we find out the following day and after another earthquake appears, Pikachu just charges into my house and saying, hey, let's go. It turns out the team that we selected was not the right selection. And it's very funny how you do this, because if you do max, proper speedrunning tactics, quote unquote, with missions, it looks like Team ACT's been there for a couple of days, and then these guys lost in 24 hours, which is very funny. Kind of funny. It's not great for Team ACT, I'll be honest, but it's kind of funny. Anyway, after Gengar tries to demotivate the crowd, our partner Pikachu remotivates the crowd, and we decide, you know what? Everybody's gonna go fight Groudon. Let's do this. And that begins our next journey. Our next quest is to go save Team ACT and beat Groudon in the process, which is gonna be fun. We have beaten some legendary birds, but this is a higher base stat total, so that's not exactly the greatest situation here, but it is us. We do have a type advantage on one of us. On the other hand, the other type advantage is basically ineffective, but there's always a strategy in place. There's always a plan. The question is, what is that plan? And so, after a little bit of preparation today, we go into the dungeon tomorrow. And that night, we have another Gardevoir dream, and if you want to read this, you can. I don't know if you've got one. This is my favorite of the Gardevoir dreams, because it just feels like two people chatting. Although Gardevoir does mention that our journey is almost over, it feels like it's just a casual conversation between the two of us, being like, you know what Groudon's like? Nah, I don't know anything about Groudon, but it sounds really interesting. I'm wishing you luck all the way. It's cool. It's got that conversational sort of feel to it. I don't know why, but that specific conversation just strikes to me as my favorite. Do you have one? I don't know, I'm asking. I don't know if people have favorite Gardevoir conversations. Nevertheless, Magma Cavern, and while the boss fight is good for us as a Bulbasaur, the dungeon itself is not, because as Magma Cavern, you would expect, has a lot of fire types. It's also got Eradicate, which can just be annoying. Despite having Runaway, it can always just be annoying. And the biggest issue, not just with this challenge and how to go through this dungeon, not just the run through itself, the biggest issue with this specific dungeon is the number of floors. There are so many floors in this dungeon, 23 of them in the bottom section here. And we, as a reminder, cannot bring items into the dungeon. The only thing we can do is our held item, which theoretically we could bring something that would be helpful for PowerPoint management, but then that would also mean giving up the bands, which is necessary to do the damage that we need to be able to get rid of all these Pokemon. As a result, this dungeon becomes increasingly more complicated. More complicated. You know what? Going scripts off the dome makes things very difficult. I don't know how the other peoples do it. I'm not great at the improv thing, despite having an improv background. We'll just let it slide, though. Here's the compilation, that's the word I'm looking for this time, of a bunch of losses that we have, because there's a lot of them. We start off with a Graveler, because Gravelers can be very, very annoying very, very quickly, and they start to throw things as well, so that's always not a great sign. Here's a Graveler that uses Magnitude, knocking me out. Why don't we follow that up with a Hyper-Fanging Raticate over here that knocks me out yet again. After a little bit of a training montage in the Dragon Maze to gain some experience points, we reach a new thing that's been unlocked after Uproar Forest, Monster Houses. As you can imagine by the fact that I'm a Grass type, my partner's an Electric type, and we're in a more powerful dungeon without full health, you can imagine how this goes very quickly. Despite a little bit of effort here, just the sheer numbers knocks us out. Here's another knockout to a double kick, not even 2 hits. And then we have a situation where Pikachu wants to start a fight, so quick attacks the Nidoqueen, followed up by a Poison Sting on me. Not great either. We go through yet another training montage, and each of these montages or so are like 3 or 4 times, typically a level or 2, just trying to get those extra stat points. We go through another training montage, try to go through the dungeons again, and I'll be honest, it looks like we're going backwards, because at this point, we haven't even reached floor 5, and we're already struggling. It doesn't help, though, that there's a bunch of Nido insert ending part here that are attacking us repeatedly, making things just even more complicated. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. There it is. We do yet another training montage, albeit a shorter one this time, just to get a level, and then from here, despite the burn, proceed forward, only to reach another monster house. This time doesn't go much better either, especially with the sheer number of poison types, and then Makarga with Rock Throw is just not fun. The Mawiles are there just to randomly add a little bit of chaos. We've got to use a bunch of our moves as well, and without max elixirs, it's going to make things basically impossible to deal with. Eventually we get knocked out. We do one more run through of the Dragon Maze, and finally, oh no. I was about to say something good, and then something bad happened. Maybe we can get out of this? I mean, we are in an area where we can get the entrance, so I asked Pikachu to just book it, get out of here, while I do one little fight there, hope I don't get knocked out, and now we're just slowly trying to avoid the rush. Luckily, the stairs are there. If the stairs were not there, we were doomed, but because we just happened to run the right direction, we survived that monster house, and eventually are able to reach that final location, that final floor. There's 22 done, 23 is all that's left. That's a little bit of a scary situation here, not gonna lie, but eventually, we find an apple, sure, why not? We find the apple, that's the big thing that we did. We go through this floor, I'm walking like step by step, trying to make sure we don't get it. I see the stairs in the corner, all we gotta do is get rid of these onyxes, which are amazingly powerful, and we reach the midpoint. From here it's a save point, and now it's smooth sailing. The only floor we have to worry about at this point is this one, because there are 3 floors in the pit. The first one's a real one, the second one is basically a non-real floor, and the third one is the boss fight. Speaking of, as we reach the second floor here, we rush up ahead a little bit to find, who was that? Charizard and Tyranitar, knocked out. After challenging Groudon and losing, Alakazam is still battling though. And so we rush up to the 3rd floor, where Alakazam is eventually about to get knocked out. And now is a fight against Groudon. 3, 2, 1. The time is here. Now I have no idea what I'm doing here, I'll be perfectly honest. So this is very much a trial run. We can always come back. So what exactly is the game plan here? Waste a move for a second, then Razor Leaf our way to success. Leech Seed here. I don't have the exclusive move user on for whatever reason. That itself is probably going to kill the run. But we try it all the same. We get things going here. The paralysis is helpful. See if maybe we can get a little lucky here. We have our partner who has learned Slam by this point. Just try to do extra damage. The Ancient Power knocks it out though. Our next run through though could be a little bit more impactful. First things first, I set everything up here, make sure exclusive move user is on, and then we start spamming those Razor Leaves. As a distance move, a grass type move, and a stab move, it's our best bet from an offensive perspective, which is very much the role that I'll be playing. Meanwhile, the partner will be paralyzing every time that we have the opportunity. Is this slower? Yes. Is this the way to success? Also yes. So we switch back and forth here, just doing as much damage as we can. We just can't get hit, because if we get hit, we're knocked out. Alright, take 3. Let's see if we can try something here. As usual, doing my little shenanigans here, making sure everything is set up. We've got everything prepared here, and we start with the Razor Leafs going off. We're able to get 3 of them out, which is good. The miss there is unfortunate, but we do get the paralysis. There you go. Let's try saying that quickly without thinking about it. Ancient Power miss is very nice. The Thunder Wave here works again, and we just switch back and forth. Slowly and carefully, chipping down as much as we can. Somehow Pikachu survives a Mud Shot, which is fantastic, though loses to the Slash. Which means we've got to go through another attempt here. But again, there's that strategy in place. It feels like we're right there on the cusp of it. We just need a little bit of luck here. The Leech Seed, Thunder Wave, perfect. We've got chip damage going repeatedly. I can do some big damage here, especially if we get a crit. The Ancient Power is good, especially if it doesn't have the boost. Thunderwave paralyzes again, and now we're getting somewhere. We're doing this. We're getting the Leech Seed off, the Razor Leafs, the Slams, more Razor Leafs, the Leech Seeds, the Slams. The Mud Shot misses fantastic. Despite that, it's not going for the big moves. It's not able to knock us out. It's switching back and forth between us, and eventually we get the win. And the best part is, since we didn't knock out with Leech Seed damage, we actually get experience points here. We save the day, and all is fantastic. All calm, cool, and collected, though the earthquakes are still happening. Cut to the returning heroes now with Team ACT, the squadron, coming back victorious. We've done it. We've saved the day. Finally, the journey is over. Oh no, it's not, because we're getting a phone call. We're getting a psychic phone call? We're getting a phone call from who? Oh, Xantu. What is Xantu talking about? Xantu's talking about a star in the sky that's coming down on the earth and is going to impale us all. Oh no, that's not good at all. And it seems like there's only one way to actually destroy that star, by going to Rayquaza at Sky Tower, the big one. And from there, we've got to persuade Rayquaza basically to be like, hey, can you not, can you beat the meteor? And of course, which team's gonna go do that job? The hero and the partner. In this case, the Bulbasaur and the Pikachu are gonna try to persuade a Rayquaza. How successful you think that's gonna be? Who knows? The next day, we're getting ready to go. But that night, though, something's off. The dream is terrible, and it's Dream Eater. And I don't know if you caught it there, spoilers for this game that is now, again, 2 decades old. It mentions there, though, Gengar mentioned that they were human as well. And I'll be honest, the first time I played through this, I didn't catch that. I don't know how, I don't know why, I just remember not catching that. So imagine my surprise, many, many years later, again, spoilers, obviously, to find out that not only was Gengar a human as well, but Gengar is the human that ruined Gardevoir's life and basically was the villain that pulled Ninetales' tail and everything like that. That was a complete shock to me, and spoilers again for that post-game thing I was talking about a little bit later. One of the adventures that you have in the post-game is Gengar coming to you, basically admitting their sins, I guess, trying to seek repentance, saving Gardevoir in the process, which you do in exchange for the fact that Gardevoir does not remember them being a spirit animal in this case, or being Gengar's trainer, or all that sort of stuff. It's just a regular Gardevoir. Gengar still accepts it though, and was able to proceed forward from there. It's a fantastic story in the post-game. It's one of the many, many cool things that the post-game still feels like it means something, which is just that cool aspect that Mystery Dungeon games have that is just, it's fun. All of the Mystery Dungeon games have at least one plot point in it, if not multiple, that are just ways to hook you in and keep you invested in that story, which is what these games are built off of. What isn't a good story, though, are Shuppet. This is very unrelated. I just don't like how Shuppet uses Spite. As I mentioned before, Spite, terrible move because it just removes all of your power points, making things impossible. Shedinja's here very fun. We can just throw a rock or an Iron Thorn or something like that, which I pick up there, making things much easier. We reach the Sky Tower pillar location here. I get them mixed up all the time. And from here, it's time for us to go save the day. Can we do it on our first attempt? What do you think? Now, I'm assuming many of you thought the answer would be no, but I don't think many of you thought that our first attempt would go 22 floors only for a for a Venomoth to beat us. Our next attempt does not go any better because of this monster house right here, and the worst part about this monster house is that there are ghost types involved, specifically Duskull. Now, the fun thing about ghost types in these games is that they, unlike any other type of Pokemon, are able to walk through walls. And not only can they walk through walls, they can attack through the walls and always have that sort of omniscient, the ability to attack everywhere because they can see everywhere type of thing. I try to use that same strategy that we used in Magma Cavern of trying to run away from it, have Pikachu run in one direction, have us run in the other, and just hope that we find the exit. Specifically, I find the exit. The problem is there are just too many Duskulls, and despite all of our efforts, eventually we get cornered. At this point, this is a good sign here that we're struggling if again the Shuppet not only curses us, we miss the Razor Leaf, Nightshade, followed by a Leech Seed, which was a very foolish decision because it could just Nightshade to knock us out. So you know what that means. More montage time! Yay! Now one really cool thing about this run was that we picked up the Warp Scarf, which is used in speedruns to basically make things so easy to just bounce around. The bad news is, I forget completely about the strategy to use the Warp Scarf, which is put your partner in the corner and make sure that they can actually do stuff. And since my partner isn't very strong, they are very scared of this Shuppet. Eventually, despite all of the efforts that we have here, and because of the hard hit that they initially took, despite making things even more complicated, makes things that much tougher. So I try to run away, I forget to take off the Warp Scarf. This was a terrible decision on my part, because had I taken it off, I could have walked to the exit and proceeded to ignore all of this, but I forget how the Warp Scarf works, and eventually, my partner gets knocked out. Finally, though, ignore the fact that Aerodactyl is here completely destroying us. Finally, though, we get through all 25 floors, find the exit, and reach the middle part of Sky Tower. That's the name, Sky Tower. I should remember that. Note to folks, he will not. Aerodactyl, wing attack, yada yada yada. Aerodactyl, bite, yada yada yada. Aerodactyl, Warp Scarf. We know Warp Scarf. Oh no, this is good, this is good. We get the Warp Scarf. This is how it's supposed to work. You put your partner in the corner, make sure they can attack, and just have them sit there while we warp around until we eventually find the room with the stairs. Takes a little bit, but as long as we can get a little bit of decent luck, we'll find it, we take it off, and now I'm setting things up. I'm preparing for this, because this is the final floor, meaning the very next thing that we're going to see is the final boss, the champion of this region, the big fight that we've got to worry about. At the summit, on the 9th floor, is Rayquaza. And Rayquaza is very strong, because it's Rayquaza. Of course it is. Rayquaza, the big green lizard dude. This is going to make things much more complicated. We have a plan, though. Thunderwave, Leech Seed, do as much damage as we can. The Silver Spike starts off, the Leech Seed there, the Thunderwave paralyzes, which is very good. And now I'm just going to go off. Pikachu's got Thunderbolt, which is very good. It's a more powerful move. We got a bunch of damaging moves at this point because that's the way that we can do this while making sure we can preserve power points. And we're able to do this damage here. We're getting it going. We have some luck here. Already solid. The Dragon Dance is not good though, because that not only makes them attack multiple times a turn occasionally, it also makes them more powerful. Dragon Dance is very good in this game, as you might expect, because it's Dragon Dance. We're trying a little bit better. I don't know how close we are, but we're getting there. We've got a shot here. Razor Leaf, Thunderwave misses though, and that might be the dagger. Even though this is there, the speed advantage works in Rayquaza's favor. Alrighty, let's try this again. Though we're out of quick attacks, we don't really need them in this case. The big thing is the electric attack just for stab purposes, and the Razor Leaf miss is not a great start. The Leech Seed and the Thunderwave miss and a Dragon Dance is also not a great start. We're trying to do damage here. I'll be honest, I could feel when going through this run that this was going to be it. We were not going to be able to succeed here, and I shouldn't be surprised. Again, when I played this game when I was younger, we were in the 50s when I finally beat Rayquaza and beat the game. We ended up being around that level, just because, partly because I was wandering around trying to do my own thing, and partly because this game can be very hard when you're underleveled, because one bad attack like a Dragon Claw there can completely obliterate us. We're just riding on the edge right here, trying to take advantage of that stab and bonuses, but ultimately no good. Now keep in mind, between each of these attempts, since I have to start from the previous save point, it's at least 4 or 5 minutes of just going through the dungeons hoping that I find the stairs. Otherwise, we're stuck and we're going to have to go back and try it all over again. So it's at least 4 to 5 minutes between each of these attempts. So we got to make this one count. Razor Leaf and Thunderbolt's doing some massive damage here. We're able to be a little bit successful. Thunderbolt's certainly the big hitter here. The Scary Face is not good. That makes Pikachu move much slower. Razor Leaf and Dragon Claw knocking me out is not helpful either. Despite this very funny situation here where Aerodactyl uses agility and then accidentally throws a silver spike at the Tropius there, what was I saying previously? Oh yeah, Aerodactyl, wing attack, yada yada yada. Alright, I'll be perfectly honest, we lose this attempt. But here's the thing I want to point out, if you see it real quick here. Just in a moment, it'll appear here. There. Hundreds of millions of years, Rayquaza did not go down south, basically to the world. Which makes me wonder, how old is Rayquaza? For hundreds of millions of years, you didn't go down to the Earth. Which, sure, why not? In this universe, Rayquaza just doesn't show up on Earth. That makes sense. Hundreds of millions. How old is Rayquaza? How old are the Pokemon on the world's Earth and things like that? How old are Pokemon like Arceus? Arceus is in this game actually at this point, but like, how old is Groudon? How old is Kyogre? How old is like Mew and Mewtwo and all those folks? Like, if this guy's 100 million plus years old, and you're not the father of all Pokemon, or the parent of all Pokemon, whatever Mew's classified as, then what, how, what? It's wing attack, so say it with me, everyone. Aerodactyl, wing attack, yada yada yada. Do you want to guess this one? I'll let you guess it. It's bite this time. Now you might have noticed something in that previous Rayquaza fight that we'll actually reference at this point. I allow linking in these because linking is part of the starter strategy, but I didn't link anyone's moves because I have to worry about PowerPoint management. I did pick up a link box in the dungeon though, and that'll make things interesting here. So I set it up so that we've got Thunder Wave on one point, Thunder Shock and Thunderbolt on the other, meaning Pikachu can do a lot of big damage. Hopefully, that'll be the thing that we need to be able to succeed in this. As I play sort of Leech Life and doing all sorts of things, Pikachu's going to play the heavy hitter when they're not paralyzing Rayquaza. Though I'll be perfectly honest, this attempt doesn't go particularly well. The Leech Seed there, the Thunder Wave miss, Dragon Dance followed by an immediate Ancient Power makes things just already on. And the second Thunder Wave miss there, yeah, this run is completely cooked. A third Thunder Wave miss? I realized pretty quickly that that was going to have to be the strategy to win this Rayquaza fight. Though I forgot to link it moves on this attempt, making this run effectively pointless. I'd even tried a run where I did Thunder Wave, Thunder Shock, and Thunderbolt on one linked move, but the problem is with Thunder Wave first, Pikachu doesn't feel like using it because the opponent's already paralyzed half the time. This time though, everything is aligned perfectly, I remember all of my steps. Leech Seed, Thunder Wave miss is not good, the Twister hit is not good either. But despite that, Rayquaza is cooperating a little bit. It's not attacking with their moves all the time, meaning that when we do get the paralysis, Pikachu's able to do nearly 100 points of damage per move, or per link, I guess in this case, making things pretty interesting. There's a chance here. Thunder Shock, Thunderbolt, and the Leech Seed doing chip damage there means that eventually we knock out Rayquaza, get a level up as well, and we beat Rayquaza to save the world. Almost. We have to beat Rayquaza to remind Rayquaza, hey, there's a meteor coming at us, can you go save the world real quick? And now here comes the story part. So, Rayquaza tells us that, hey, we were going to get blown up if that meteor blows up there. Take cover, dodge, weave, and everything goes downhill. After a little bit, though, we wake up in the Voidlands and wonder to ourselves, what exactly is going on? Gengar appears and is about to drag us down to the depths of the earth, to the dark world, though Gengar seems lost. Gengar seems confused. Gengar decides to just leave us where we are, only for that to be the Hill of the Ancients? But that would mean that Gengar saved us. Saved me and saved Pikachu. Xatu informs us that the star has been destroyed and eventually the world will come to peace. And you can see now everybody in Pokemon Square, Wishcash Pond, the whole 9 yards, the Pelipers are floating around delivering mail. All's calm, cool, and collected. And everything is fine. But because everything is fine, everything is done. So Gardevoir appears and tells us, our journey is over. Our time has ended. And this is the part that hits everybody the hardest. I talk for the first time in this entire story, by the way, which is another fun thing there. It's not our choice, though. We have to leave. And this devastated me as a kid. It still devastates me now, even knowing what happens afterwards. For multiple reasons. One, from a video game player's perspective, I thought the game was going to, soft reset on me, or just out of nowhere and be like, nope, we're just going to start you right before the Rayquaza fight. Good luck. And then the other thing is, you go through this entire journey with your partner. It's a story where you are the Pokemon. It's not you playing as a trainer. You are this. Your choices led to you becoming that starter Pokemon, becoming that specific version of yourselves with your movesets and your items. And that's the cool thing about Pokemon in general, is the fact that you're able to do this in a way that makes your journey your own. And that's so cool about this game. That's how we beat this game, and that's how we did. That is the Bulbasaur Pikachu run. That is a recreation of my first ever Blue Rescue Team run-through. And as I let the credits play, we have to ask ourselves, how did we do? Well, you can see it on the screen right here. It was pretty decent, I have to say so myself, especially considering it's been a while since I've run one of these games. The last starter study was many, many months ago, so I was wondering if it was going to be in the same ballpark, but hey, not too shabby at all. And it even beat the time that the Charmander Squirtle Squad had by a few minutes. Nowhere near what the Machop Trico line, though, was, and that seems to be the best run so far. In fact, on the screen right now, you can see a ranking, or sort of a ranking, a list of how exactly we did on all of these, which you can tell the discrepancy between the Machop Trico team and the other two teams we run so far. But nevertheless, that is a job well done, a starter series combination done, and of course, we can't leave without asking to stay a little bit longer and let this journey continue, not just for this specific adventure, but for the starter series as a whole. And with this being the quote-unquote launch of the recreating my first run playthrough series thing of some sort, perhaps you'll see my first main series game up next. So, thank you everyone for listening, watching, and supporting in any way, shape, or form that you do. And until next time, take care.